Morning, Todd. Thanks for the time. How are you, and how's Elizabeth? How's the family and your extended family of Westlake Chaparrals?
Oh, everybody's doing great. Elizabeth and I are out here at Horseshoe Bay, and she's doing getting busy in some real estate, and my week consists of Zoom meetings with players and coaches, just probably like every other coach in America.
Yeah. Now you've got me curious, Todd, about how Elizabeth handles the whole Zoom side of things with real estate. You know, I guess you're looking at a lot of virtual properties online. Is that how she's operating?
Absolutely. You know, looking at a lot of things, and it's interesting. We never thought that during this time that she would be very busy, but over about the last 3 or 4 weeks, things have really started back up. I think people are getting anxious, and especially out here in this area. So that's been good. But we're all very, very anxious to get back around our extended families, and that's our football programs.
Toward that end, Todd, this is something I remember asking Coach Herman about this. I've asked other coaches about this as well, about the managing of what you wanted your guys to work on, what they could work on, given the absence of workout facilities or what they're normally used to about coming up to the field house when in the spring. And then, of course, you didn't even have spring football, couldn't have that as well. So how have you and the staff been able to manage that with your guys during this time as you head toward the summer?
Well, from a physical standpoint, to be honest with you, Craig, you just have to trust. You have to trust your players that they're getting some work done. And with some of them, they have weights at their home. Some of them, they don't. We gave them recommended workouts, 6-7 weeks ago for with weights, without weights, also conditioning work, and then constantly, from a skill standpoint, encouraging them to work their craft, footwork and so forth like that, but also stay very smart in the way that they train, so they don't have too many around each other. So a lot of that is trust. Then then our meetings have been, we have felt like we've installed and reinstalled our entire offense during this pandemic, and now we're going back over and kind of having them teach it back to us. And try to just cover as many ways of learning as you possibly can. And I think all coaches across the state would agree we're probably going to have when we do get to play football again, we probably won't have near as many busted assignments as you do early in the season. Now, I don't know if anybody's going to be fast enough, strong enough, quick enough to get anything done, but I think we'll know where we're going.
Coach, we've heard college coaches talk about, you got to have contingency plans in terms of when you're allowed back in the building and when you can practice again, and trying to figure out all these different plans. So now that the UIL, I guess more guidelines are coming about June 8th, and limited strength and conditioning being allowed to take place at that time. But for you and your staff, how much has this time been about, okay, let's have a plan in place if we're back on such and such a date and these are the parameters, here's what we can do, but let's plan for. And in other words, how much have contingency plans occupied your time the last few weeks?
Well, they definitely have, and we wanted to be because we needed to visit about all that for whenever it happens. But we do have a plan, and we feel good about it, and we feel safe about it. But we also know that here later in the week, our plan is probably going to be tweaked a little bit to, of course, to follow the guidelines. But, we're doing stuff like talking about weight rooms, and, in our weight room, we can divide our weight room into about 3 different, parts, and create 3 weight rooms within one, and then get a minimum number of players with a minimum number of coaches, whether that be 6 at a time, 8 at a time, 10 at a time. We can do all of those. And I think, what the deal when we start the weightlifting part of things, it may take from 7 a.m. till 3 p.m. to get everybody, lifted each day. But so be it, if that's what has to happen. But, as far as the skill development and getting together with from team activities, we really haven't talked a whole lot about that. We're doing more right now and planning what our conditioning is going to look like.
Well, and that is interesting what you talked about what your strength and training staff would do with regard to weights and things of that nature. I was curious to get your thoughts as closely as you have worked with your quarterbacks over the years and being a former record-setting quarterback yourself at that level. How much do you feel not having 7-on-7 was adversely affected your guys, or did you feel like it had that big an effect other than just missing the competition and an opportunity to perhaps keep your quarterbacks and receivers sharp?
If I said that it wasn't a detriment, I'd be lying to you, because it is, especially since we didn't have spring football practice. And then the best thing, and I think most coaches across the state will tell you, it's not the wins and losses of 7-on-7. It is the camaraderie that's built between quarterback, wide receiver, DB, linebacker units. It's the competition, and just the reps versus really other good athletes. And so, we're, our quarterbacks and receivers in very small groups, they've been throwing, they've been, keeping up with that. I don't worry that if we were allowed to start practice, in 3 or 4 days from now, that our quarterbacks' arms wouldn't be in shape to start practice. But it's we've been doing everything from through our Zoom meetings, really going back over, and the word virtual seems to be used a lot right now. Well, we're doing a whole lot of trying to almost put them in an assimilator type deal for decision making. And when you have young quarterbacks, of course, I got Cade coming back who has a ton of experience, but I've got some young ones that need to be brought up to speed with just how to run our no-huddle offense, just the verbiage at the line of scrimmage, calling protections, reading the roof for how many safeties there are, going through all of the reads on the perimeter of our RPO game. And that's stuff that they didn't get, these young ones didn't get during spring, and that's probably the biggest thing that we're trying to get to them right now, that if we start practice, I always tell my coaches, if they let us start practice in 4 days from now, how ready are we going to be? And that's going to be up to us as coaches through these meetings.
You mentioned Cade Klubnik, of course, and for folks who didn't know, you got him, as you mentioned, a lot of reps, no doubt, before Kirkland Michaud wound up guiding you the rest of the way from midseason as the starter and taking the bulk of the snaps all the way to the state championship. But how valuable was it to get Cade all the snaps that you got him last year to be able to navigate through all of this? You mentioned the whole thing about your younger guys missing some valuable stuff. I would imagine if Cade hadn't taken many snaps, you'd be a lot more concerned about your quarterback situation with a rising junior than you might normally be.
Absolutely, and the plan that we had last year was not one that I've done before. It's not one you see a whole lot. It was in our best interest. Really, part of the plan was for the future, and because I pretty much could see that Cade Klubnik was going to be our guy for his junior and senior year, and he may have been for his sophomore year, but I wanted to make sure he was going to play on the varsity as a sophomore and get the kind of experience. So, for Cade, he went through an entire spring football practice. I think that was the biggest thing for him, was this time last year when he was a freshman, he was doing some great things, and he was making some really, what I say, good mistakes, because, to get good at anything, you got to make mistakes out to get it and get it improved. But he was getting his little tail knocked off day in and day out. We blitzed the hell out of him last spring. And so that made him ready to step in and some really valuable time this year. I mean, when we played Lake Travis, of course, it was the only game we lost last year, but he stepped in through the second half and played about as well as you could expect. He did really well. And then the next game against Del Valle, he started and had 4 touchdown passes and 2 rushing touchdowns, in that game. And so I'm really glad that we were able to get him all of the reps that we did.
Craig Way and Jeff Howe here on Light the Tower, joined by Westlake Chaparral's head coach, Todd Dodge.
Coach Dodge, from a recruiting standpoint, I know you've got kids that are getting offers at this time, but obviously with no spring evaluation period, college coaches haven't been on the road. Kind of twofold question for you. One, how much have you missed the face-to-face contact with the college coaches coming through your building? And then two, just the opportunity that your kids are missing, not just to get the Division I offers, but your FCF schools, Division II's, kids that might have those opportunities that otherwise would have gotten them this spring, that those opportunities aren't going to be there.
Right. For this situation for us at Westlake, we have missed having the coaches come through because it's good for our players. It's always good for us too. When you get college guys coming through, you get to talk a little ball while they're in, and maybe get a nugget or something here or there. For a couple of our younger players that 2023 to 2022, things have kind of blown up for them, and that's Cade Klubnik and Jade Greathouse. But our older guys, really. Aiden Kennard, our returning guard, he's gotten a few Division I offers as this has gone on. Zane Miners has got some attention, but there's no doubt that there's no substitute for these college coaches being on our campus and having eyes on. We've just tried to put together the best material for these coaches to see, through a huddle and to evaluate and give them anything that they need. If they need practice material on the kids, if they need game material, if they want highlight videos, we try to get all of that out on our kids.
Todd, one thing about this UIL announcement, talking about the possibility of limited work, and as we talk about limited summer strength and conditioning, activities going on. One thing that I know Rick Cantu had in his piece, it said that you wanted to get a few more specifics before you can move forward with your summer plans. What specifically do you feel like you need to know exactly from the UIL about before you can put the plan that you have in your mind for your guys about your next round of specifics?
Well, it's not necessarily knowing specifics. We are ready to roll. It's just, I'll just give you an example. It might be right now in our plan in the weight room, we have a plan to have 8 athletes, working with one coach, or with around about 4 power racks. Well, the UIL might say you can't have but 6 together. And it's just those little, wrinkles like that. We are ready to roll on the 8th. And interestingly, our summer conditioning program, of course, across the state, different staffs do different things. Some people use outside entities, like Performance Course that we use forever at South Lake Carroll, and we also use at Westlake. We're not, because of the pandemic this summer. We were going to do our own. We're going to do our own. So it's just a matter of getting the guidelines. And the one thing I want to make sure of, that we do everything we can, and all the other coaches across the state, that no one goes off on their own deal, because I'm afraid that we get rolling on this, and all of a sudden somebody goes rogue, and then they shut us down. We're just all excited about getting back to work. One thing that concerns me a little bit, as the last 2 or 3 days is, there was something that came out from the governor's office, or TEA, talking about summer school is going to be available, and that's all good. But and it came out yesterday, they said that, that gymnasiums and athletic facilities would be closed during that. And then the UIL comes out, an hour later and says we can start training on the 8th. So I hope that over the next, few days they get together and because I could see how they could be confusing superintendents across the state of Texas if we're not careful.
No doubt about that. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about the newest hire in your new district for the season. It's the guy you saw across the field from you in the state championship game last year. There's been a lot of talk about John Walsh taking the job at San Marcos. What's your thoughts about that?
I tell you what, John, I consider John a friend, and we've known each other a long time. I'm very excited for John. He obviously found that he had left Geyer, right before all this started, and that kind of doesn't surprise me, to be honest with you, that he would land. I'm sure he was looking for a one horse town, so to speak. They've got great facilities there in San Marcos. They've proven in the past that they can win, and they're getting one hell of a football coach in John Walsh. And it's here in the district that we're in. We welcome competition. We welcome a chance to compete and a chance to get better, and we'll definitely have that challenge with him coming into the fold.
I don't have your schedule right in front of me. Do you have them at home, or do you have to go down there this fall?
I believe we are going to San Marcos for the first round of it. Yeah,
I got you.
We'll be there. Yeah.
Okay. Last thing I want to ask you is, with regard to, we talk about how coaches, kind of share information with one another, especially in a time like this. You and I have talked about this before. You've got somebody pretty close to you that's a pretty prominent head coach, and that's Riley. How has he and his staff been navigating through everything at South Lake Carroll, especially given the unique dynamic that you're facing off against one another at AT&T Stadium to open the season this fall?
I tell you what, we talk a lot. And we had I was there, I can't even keep up with days through this crazy times, but it's probably 3 or 4 weeks ago. And Lisbon and I went up and we wanted to see the grandsons. And Riley and I went out and played a round of golf there in Keller. And so the stakes for the golf match were whoever won the golf match got to choose the chapter for the game that we were playing. So
wow.
We had a little friendly deal there, and so that was fun. And then, but we talk all the time. He obviously, I'm so proud of Riley just to kind of see him. It's crazy that I'm going to be competing against him for about 2.5 hours, at the beginning of the season, but. What a fantastic job he has done and will do. And, he's a guy that, he was a GA at A&M for 2 years, for a year. He was a quality control at Texas for 2 or 3 years. His, in his ability to work those computers and work everything with it is unbelievable for, way ahead of me. I'm a fossil when it comes to all that. And he just does a fantastic job of leading his staff. But they've, it looks like it's going to be on. We're sure looking forward to playing that game.
You can't leave us hanging. Who won the golf match, and which chapter of officials are you going to use?
Well, I won, and I haven't chosen the chapter yet.
Okay. All right. Todd, I appreciate you taking the time. I know, like we said, unusual circumstances. It's good to catch up, and we'll do it again. We'll look forward to having our regular installment this fall on Wednesday mornings if that works out for you again.
I look forward to that. It is great talking to you, Craig.
All right. Thanks, Todd. Appreciate it.
Thank y'all for having me on.
Thanks, Coach.
All right. That's Todd Dodge, head coach of the Westlake Chaparrals. Yeah, see, he's so modest. He wasn't even going to mention the fact that he won the golf match now. So